Hello and welcome. You're watching DD India. I'm Gautam Roy. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to have a bilateral meeting with US President Donald Trump later in the day in Washington, D.C. He'll be the fourth world leader to visit the White House to meet the American Commander-in-Chief since he returned to the Oval Office for a second term. For the next 1 hour, we'll be covering all key facets of the India-US ties, from defense to trade, energy to technology and people to people, with our expert guests to understand how this comprehensive global strategic partnership could be moved forward by the two leaders. Well, India and the United States share a comprehensive global strategic partnership driven by democratic values, shared interests and vibrant people-to-people contacts. The US is not only India's largest trading partner, it has also been part and parcel of India's growing strategic strength and developmental journey through the years.
Endeavor, and this driven by shared democratic values, convergence of interest on a range of issues and vibrant people-to-people connects. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent visit to the United States underscores further strengthening of bilateral ties with a focus on trade, defense, energy and technology. Cooperation in counter-terrorism is one of the pillars of the bilateral partnership, featuring information exchange, capacity building, operational cooperation and regular dialogue through the India-US Joint Working Group on Counter-Terrorism. In 2017, both sides initiated a dialogue on domestic and international terrorist designations listing proposals. Education partnership is an important pillar of Indo-US ties with strong linkages and history of higher education collaborations. Both countries support scholarships and grants to US and Indian scholars, professionals and students. Global Initiative of Academic Networks, or GIAN, was launched by India in 2015 to facilitate visits by 1,000 US teachers annually to teach in India. India-US defense cooperation is based on new framework. On July 30, 2018, India was moved into the Tier 1 of the US Department of Commerce's Strategic Trade Authorization License exception. The United States is the largest trading partner of India. Bilateral trades in goods and services stood at $190.1 billion for the calendar year 2023. During the financial year 2023-24, US was the third largest source of FDI into India with inflows of US dollars, $4.9 billion, accounting for almost 9% of the total FDI equity inflows. Cultural cooperation between two countries is rich and manifests in diverse ways. There are India-focused educational programs in universities and educational institutions. Indian embassies and consulates organize various cultural events to showcase diverse facets of Indian culture. Sayyid Absarul Hassan for DD India.
US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard called on Prime Minister Narendra Modi after he reached there in Washington, D.C. Prime Minister Modi fondly recalled his earlier interactions with Tulsi Gabbard. The discussions touched upon enhancing bilateral intelligence cooperation, particularly in counter-terrorism, cybersecurity, emerging threats and strategic intelligence sharing. They also exchanged views on regional and global developments of mutual interest, reaffirming their commitment to a secure, stable and rules-based international order. And before she called on Prime Minister Modi, Tulsi Gabbard was sworn in as the top US spy on Wednesday, with Republican support behind a nominee once considered one of President Donald Trump's most controversial picks. We have more details.
Do solemnly swear. I, Tulsi Gabbard, do solemnly swear that I will...
Tulsi Gabbard was sworn in as the top US spy on Wednesday. At the swearing-in ceremony, US President Donald Trump praised Gabbard and also entrusted her with overseeing urgently needed reforms to the US intelligence community to protect the rights and the civil liberties of all Americans.
Faith and allegiance to the same.
Tulsi Gabbard's an American of extraordinary courage and exceptional patriotism. She's devoted her entire life to public service, and I've watched her for years on different shows and everything. I said, She's a woman of great common sense, and, we like the common sense.
In response, Gabbard expressed her commitment to focus on ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people.
So I look forward to being able to help fulfill that mandate that the American people delivered to you very clearly in this election, to refocus our intelligence community by empowering the great patriots who have chosen to serve our country in this way, and focus on ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people.
Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party in 2022 to become an independent before finally backing Donald Trump and joining the Republican Party in 2024. She has served 4 terms in the House of Representatives. She will now lead an agency established after September 11, 2001 terror attacks to coordinate US's intelligence operations, one of the most critical national security roles in the US government. Earlier, the Republican-controlled US Senate confirmed Tulsi Gabbard as Trump's choice to lead the country's intelligence services. Gabbard scraped through a 52 to 48 floor vote. Gabbard had looked vulnerable, but 3 Republican holdouts finally ended up lining behind her. Bureau Report, DD India.
Let me now take you across live to Washington, D.C. My colleague Shubhendu Ghosh is joining us from there on, this key upcoming bilateral meeting. Hi, Shubhendu. Now, how much longer to that much anticipated moment of the Modi-Trump talks where the US President has taken a very strident stand on his MAGA agenda in his second innings at the Oval Office?
Hello, Gautam, from a very chilly Washington, D.C. Well, in a way, the engagement with the new administration with Prime Minister Narendra Modi had started the moment he touched down here in Washington, D.C. From France, the very first engagement that we talked about with Tulsi Gabbard, the number of bilaterals, engagements with the heads of the departments of the new administration are taking place today. Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy from Department of Efficiency, the new NSA, they're all going to are calling on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Remember, it's the first meeting of Prime Minister Narendra Modi with the new administration, but the most anticipated one of them all. Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump meeting, sitting together. That is going to take place post-lunch local time. It's going to be around 4 p.m. when that engagement and meeting starts. It's going to be followed later in the evening. Both the leaders are expected to address the media about what they had discussed. But yes, the anticipation, excitement is very high. Both the leaders share an excellent personal rapport, but there are diverse issues on the discussion table. India and US are very close partners. President Trump has in fact prioritized some of his tariff concerns, but there'll be much to discuss and negotiate for the leaders. Remember, it's just the very first meeting, so in that sense we also have to see that the focus is going to be the broader roadmap that the two leaders would like to see, where India and US ties could be taken forward. In that sense, the specifics and the larger agenda will be revealed later in the evening today. Gautam?
Certainly, Shubhendu. Now, how would India like to move the comprehensive global strategic partnership forward with the US under the Trump presidency? For instance, we already have a defense framework which is approaching the end of its tenure. It was renewed in 2015 for 10 years, so 2025, another renewal on cards?
That's right, Gautam. One of the priorities that India would like to focus on, and it has been a priority, especially with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's successive governments, is to promote Make in India. Particularly in the defense sector, we are talking about not simply purchasing advanced machines, advanced weapon systems for our own defense need, but to be able to co-produce them, co-manufacture them in the country. We know that President Donald Trump would also like a better trade in the manner that America could sell more to India. India would also be an interesting market, but again, what India would prefer would be an opportunity to co-manufacture and co-produce. So we see an area of great opportunity activity and also negotiation in that front. But India and the US continue to be very, very close strategic partner. The importance of Indo-Pacific, the manner in which it has gained currency in the recent years is for everyone to see. And with Japan and Australia, India and the US, in fact, carried the responsibility not just for the four nations, but of the whole region, which comprises many small islands also, who would seek to have a free and open Indo-Pacific. In that sense, convergences, interconnectedness of the administration, of the resources at various levels is what each of the partners would want. India would want that its own strategic autonomy is retained while forging very, very close partnership with the United States.
Certainly. And we saw how the focus even in France, which Prime Minister Modi visited just before coming to Washington DC, was to a large extent on areas of frontier technology and energy, particularly renewable energy, nuclear energy in particular. Now, do you think there would be a similar theme playing out here as well with Donald Trump?
Absolutely. And for a moment, Gautam, if I can just turn around our camera and show you the anticipation around Prime Minister Narendra Modi's presence here in the United States. There are these hoardings on trucks doing rounds in the city, talking about the close bond between Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump. In that sense, Washington DC today is buzzing with excitement in the manner in which the two leaders are going to be taking forward the partnership. Coming to your question, Gautam, that you mentioned, yes, critical emerging technologies are an important place of convergence for both India and the United States. For India, the kind of investments in the recent years, very recent times that it has made in semiconductor technology, trying to emerge as an important part of the global supply chain. Both US and India have underlined the concerns vis-a-vis with China having just one supplier of critical technologies, critical hardware, and what that could do in sort of holding the whole world ransom. So in that sense, the diversification of global supply chains in the critical technologies, in that India is a very, very important emerging partner. United States identifies that. It knows that while engaging in a trade war with China, it needs a partner with which it can keep these technologies, keep the exports, imports moving. So in that sense, hugely significant critical technologies, advanced technologies such as AI. Both India and America are democracies. The manner in which they look at the concerns, the opportunities around a new technology like artificial intelligence is greatly similar. And we saw the manner in which Vice President of the US and Prime Minister Modi in France spoke about the convergences in this domain. So yes, that is a very, very exciting and important area in which the two countries and the two leaders would like to move forward in the same spirit.
And certainly, Shubhendu, and things moving pretty fast on the Ukraine conflict front as well. And we've had the US administration saying off the record in the sense that President Trump would love to hear what Prime Minister Modi has to say, how to achieve peace on that front. So you think that could also figure prominently in their talks?
Certainly, the important aspect of the relationship, the personal rapport between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump is that both the leaders understand one another's worldview. They understand the priorities with which the other works, and there is also a lot of convergence, which is important for any friendship to develop and flourish. In that sense, both the leaders, if we see in their own ways, have prioritized peace for the region. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has a number of times said very clearly that this is not an era of war, and peace, in fact, is the side that India takes. India is not neutral. India is consciously pushing for peace in the region, in this case, particularly the Russia-Ukraine conflict. President Trump would also want immediate peace. He has just come into power. There are n number of priorities he'd like to focus in, especially as far as the domestic concerns in America are concerned, the economy is concerned. He wouldn't like to be distracted by America's investment in conflicts, which he sees as futile. First, what's going on in West Asia vis-a-vis Gaza, and now countries have achieved some bit of stability, ceasefire for some time there, but now the attention now turns to Russia, Ukraine. So in that, there is a great of convergence in the manner in which these two leaders look at this conflict. There is a certain degree of futility that they both recognize in it, and therefore the push for peace, at what cost, we'll have to see how negotiations go on, but both leaders are of the view that the concerned parties must come on the negotiating table to achieve a long and lasting peace
Yes,
immediately.
and India's had a similar refrain as far as the conflict in West Asia or Middle East is also concerned, with the two-state solution as the ultimate outcome of any set of talks. Let's see if that also comes up. And ultimately, of course, India-US ties are a lot about people-to-people ties. Particularly, we have a very strong diaspora there in the US, and with that, we have certain issues that also keep cropping up in terms of movement of people. Do you think that will also be a key component of the talks today?
Immigration is a very, very significant an issue, Gautam. We have to understand and acknowledge the issue of both legal and illegal immigration. There is no doubt about the clarity which both the leaders understand the challenge that illegal immigration can be for any country, whether it is United States or it is India. But legal immigration, the ways in which those processes can be streamlined. We were speaking to some students. Mind you, there are some 3.3 lakh Indian students studying here in America, making them the biggest foreign students group in the America. So there is, and they bring with them a great deal of investment. Some of them were saying that they've taken student loan to be able to study at prestigious American universities. So there is a lot of investment also by Indian students in America in getting their education. Now, their concerns remain that once the education is done, the manner in which professional work experience in America is taken forward through the means of visas like H-1B visa, a little more clarity on that visa, the certainty of getting it. Although Indians are still by and large the highest recipient of H-1B visa, students say that more clarity is required. It is still not a list that is drawn up on the basis of merit and work experience, but a lot of ways a certain lottery system comes into play.
Shubhendu,
So in that
just
sense,
hold that thought for a
people
second,
need to
because
connect.
we've had some fresh input coming in. We've got these images of the American National Security Advisor Michael Waltz calling on Prime Minister Modi at Blair House. You can see those pictures there, the two leaders having their discussions on issues of mutual interest where national security is concerned. A lot of convergence there in terms of ensuring that the world is a more peaceful place, where a lot of these mischievous elements who disrupt peace and sow fear in the minds of people never succeed. Shubhendu, if you're with me, could you talk a little bit about the kind of security cooperation that India and the US have had in the past, which could also be taken further here on? I'm told that Shubhendu is no longer with us, but you can see those images there. Michael Waltz, US NSA, meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Washington, D.C. This is ahead of the key bilateral talk between Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump.
Gautam, I'm still there. I heard your question about the meeting of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the new NSA of the American administration. Hugely significant India and America cooperation and convergence in the domain of security, counter-terror in particular. We understand both the leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, take a very hard line and clear, no compromise stand against the menace of terrorism. Both India and America have seen the worst of terrorism, what it can do to societies and communities. So in that sense, the cooperation in this particular department, counter-terror, intelligence sharing, is going to be very, very significant. And here we see members of the new administration, in this case the NSA, coming and calling on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It is interesting, it's a new administration that has come into place. Each of the department is leader is coming and briefing the Prime Minister about their priorities and the manner in which they would like to take forward the cooperation
Certainly.
with India. So that sort of assumes great significance. The richness with which and the intensity with which the deliberation and the exchange between India and US is taking place through these meetings. Gautam?
Yes, let's see what emerges, because we will have the two leaders also addressing the media once they've had their talk. So we will perhaps learn more about what kind of engagements have taken place, what kind of talks have taken place at different levels, starting from, of course, the President and the Indian Prime Minister and other members of his administration. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment. Shubhendu Ghosh from Washington, D.C. And we're taking a quick break at this point, but the special will continue about Prime Minister's visit to the US. Stay with us.
झूलता उछलता है दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Come on boys, let's go practice.
अरे रुक यार, मेरे बैंक अकाउंट में गलत एंट्री का प्रॉब्लम हो गया।
अरे तो बैंक को कंप्लेन करना।
बैंक को लिखे 1 महीना हो गया है, बट वो गूगली पे गूगली डाले जा रहा है।
तो आरबीआई के लोकपाल को इन्फॉर्म करो।
रुक, मैं समझाता हूँ। जैसे क्रिकेट में थर्ड अंपायर, वैसे ही आरबीआई का ओम्बुड्समैन। आरबीआई कहता है अगर बैंक आपकी कंप्लेंट को 1 महीने में नहीं सुलझाता तो आप आरबीआई के कंप्लेंट मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम पर ऑनलाइन कंप्लेंट कर सकते हैं। ये आरबीआई का आसान तरीका है आपकी कंप्लेंट सुलझाने का, और वो भी फ्री।
आरबीआई कहता है जानकार बनिए, सतर्क रहिए।
Welcome back. You're watching this special on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the US on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and well, the Prime Minister is there. He's just met the US NSA. Before that, we had Tulsi Gabbard, the National Intelligence Head, calling on Prime Minister Modi as well. But we're building it up to the big moment where the two leaders of the two nations come face to face, and let's talk about it a little bit more. We have Catherine Hadda with us, Senior Visiting Fellow, Chair on India and Emerging Asia Economies at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, which is a Washington-based think tank. We also have former senior diplomat Prabhu Dayal, and Professor W.P.S. Sindhu is also with us. He's at the Center for Global Affairs, New York University. Welcome to you all. If I could first come to you, Ms. Hadda, and just ask you in terms of how the US is already India's largest trading partner, the third largest investor. The trade level is, well, just shy of about $200 billion annually. If you look at the last figures, $190.1 billion. But once upon a time, there was a goal of taking it up to $500 billion. So do you think we could see movement on that front with this particular meeting later today?
I don't know that we're going to be able to find $300 billion in trade in this particular meeting, but I think there are going to be some challenges ahead on trade for sure. One is that the president announced on his social media post that he was going to do a press conference a few hours before he meets with the prime minister, announcing reciprocal tariffs. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. He has previously said that any country that has a trade surplus with us, which would include India, could be subject to those tariffs, but I don't imagine they're going to be applied evenly, and they certainly haven't been, for example, with China and what he had threatened to do with Canada and Mexico. So it'll be interesting to see. I do think we may see some purchasing announcements from your government, for example, on hydrocarbons, specifically liquid natural gas, defense equipment, all that might be announced. I have to say that your government's budget that the finance minister announced already gave some concessions to the United States, or indicated a willingness to concede to the United States on certain tariffs of interest to U.S. exporters, notably Harley-Davidson motorcycles, which were an issue last time. So I don't think there's any doubt that both sides would like to see an increase in trade, but I think the priority of this president right now is to see a more balanced trade, and that's going to be the focus of his
But do you feel that this issue of reciprocal tariffs, the announcement that has been scheduled, would President Trump make that applicable to India even before he has heard what Prime Minister Modi has to say?
I can't predict what the president's going to do, and I think anyone who tells you they will is incorrect. I do think they get along very well, President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. I don't think he'll want to embarrass the Prime Minister, so it just remains to be seen what the announcement will be. In general, they do understand each other. They do get along. To some extent, they're both riding high right now. The President Trump has had a very active 3 weeks in his first administration, victory in the elections that a year ago no one might have thought possible. And then the Prime Minister, even though India now has a coalition, a governing coalition, he just had this significant victory in Delhi. So to some extent, they're both riding high, which is good. I think the thing that will be interesting to watch is both leaders are also very responsive to their constituents. So in some extent, right now on issues like immigration, I wrote a piece, if anyone's interested, for the CSIS website on this. But to some extent, the emphasis on immigration is what may pit Prime Minister Modi's base a bit against President Trump's base, which is very keen to limit immigration, whereas Prime Minister Modi certainly at least wants to see continued legal immigration, and may have only seen the tip of the iceberg in terms of deportations of Indian citizens, since they're up to 7.25 lakh undocumented Indians in the United States right now. So all this remains to be played out. It also offers opportunity for cooperation. All these conflicts do.
Yes, because there was one time when a limited trade deal was also talked about, and perhaps that could be taken up again by either side.
That is true. The major get that India would have gotten in those talks would have been a reestablishment of duty-free exports in certain categories in the United States. That whole program has now lapsed, but there certainly will be room to negotiate and discuss in the months ahead. I would see this visit as more a chance to set the tone, and I would predict it will be a cooperative tone on all these issues. And as I say, I do think there's room to make positive things out of all these.
Okay,
And
let me bring my other two guests in as well. Prabhu Dayal, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, if I could ask you, what is your take on how India and US ties could, in an overall manner, considering the kind of backdrop that they have, be moved forward even while keeping these issues in mind, where President Trump, the US particularly, feels that some sort of a balance needs to be struck where trade is concerned?
Well, the previous panelist was absolutely right when she said that the tone would be cooperative, but she was equally right when she said that with Trump, you can never know. You can't predict for sure. Now, there is a certain signal that has been sent out already, because with all the cabinet ministers of the Trump administration coming and meeting Prime Minister Modi individually and having a briefing session with him, I think the signal has been clear that the Trump administration wants the relationship to be filled with content. He wants it to be a meaningful relationship. Now, there are certain bilateral aspects, and there are some geopolitical global aspects. The three most important bilateral aspects, of course, are tariffs, immigration, and defense and security purchases. I think that as far as tariffs are concerned, considering that the attempt at the moment is to have a cordial atmosphere, I don't expect that any announcement relating to high tariffs vis-a-vis India would be made today, although President Trump has said that he would be announcing some tariffs in regard to countries which have put high tariffs on the United States. Of course, nothing can be ruled out, and there is always the possibility that there will be some pressure mounting on us. Then we come to immigration. In India, people were only upset about the manner in which the illegal immigrants were sent back. Nobody questions the right of the United States to deport illegal immigrants or illegal migrants. But there was a certain amount of consternation about the fact that they were handcuffed and they were in chains and sent back in a somewhat inhumane manner. And there was a public outcry on this issue. So I suppose this might be taken up, but of course, at the same time, the issue of legal immigration, which has been also much talked about, may not figure so prominently because a number of very influential opinion makers in the United States are of the view that H-1B visa holders are an asset to the United States, particularly in the science and technology areas. So this may not be poised towards becoming a very major obstacle in the relationship. Now we come to the defense and security aspect, and the previous panelist was absolutely right when she said that there will be an effort on the part of the United States to make India buy more equipment. India needs this equipment. Look, India is the world's largest importer of defense equipment. The United States is the world's largest exporter. So there is a natural equation which already exists there. The problem is that relating to the transfer of technology, India is committed to the idea of Make in India. We want to import high quality defense equipment, but we want that equipment should slowly and steadily be indigenized. It should be made in India. And transfer of technology has not been a very popular item with President Trump earlier. So that could be an area where some obstacles might be encountered, but good discussions could lead to a possible solution. Now I come to geopolitical issues. Iran is a stumbling block. India has major investments in the Chabahar port. The Trump administration is bound to take a harsh view towards Iran, and it remains to be seen whether the harsh view of the Trump administration translates into some sort of tough actions vis-a-vis Indian investments in Chabahar. Then the other very, very important geopolitical global issue is China, because the United States is concerned about Chinese expansionism. And while there may be some relieving of tensions in the foreseeable future, the threat from China cannot be wished away. It is a territorial threat with Chinese expansionism. There is also the economic aspect, because China is a disruptor of secure supply chains. So these are issues on which there is commonality in thought, and they will certainly figure in the bilateral discussions. On balance, I think that the tone and the tenor of these meetings would be good. The outcome will be positive, and if there are any obstacles, then there will be an attempt to put in place a framework or a timetable to address them. But at the moment, they will not be allowed to become obstacles which spoil the atmospherics of the Prime Minister's visit.
Certainly, one can hope that that would be the case. But let me just also play out for you how Prime Minister Modi was received when he reached the US this time around. Well, India and US relationship runs long, wide and deep. And when the two leaders first met in 2017 in Washington, D.C., Prime Minister Modi was the first world leader to be hosted by then US President Trump for a dinner at the White House. And then when they spoke to the media, Donald Trump has said that the relationship with India has never been stronger, never been better. And PM Modi had said his vision of New India converges with Donald Trump's MAGA vision. Now, how will this convergence be taken forward 8 years down the line is the key question.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a two-day visit to the United States. He is set to hold high-stakes meeting with President Donald Trump, becoming one of the first foreign leaders to meet the US leader after his inauguration as the 47th president. PM Modi's trip underscores the long-standing friendship between him and Donald Trump. His visit, the second leg of his two nations tour, aims to further strengthen India-US relations with a focus on key areas such as technology, trade, defense, energy, supply chain resilience, and global security challenges. showcasing the depth of the bilateral partnership. As soon as Prime Minister Modi landed in Washington, D.C., he received a warm welcome by the Indian diaspora. Members of the Indian community waited at the hotel to have a glimpse of PM Modi. Braving the chilly winter, members of the Indian community gathered outside hotel chanting Modi Modi and waving Indian flags to greet him. PM also reciprocated, waving his hand to the people and talking to the members of the Indian community.
अनुभव जो है बहुत ही अच्छा रहा। ये कहें कि विश्व का सब कुछ मिल गया। मोदी जी ने हमें आशीर्वाद दिया और भारत के प्रधानमंत्री जो कि इतने सुलझे हुए, इतने पहुंचे हुए, इतने कर्मठ इंसान हैं, जो लाखों करोड़ों भारतवासियों की दिन रात सेवा कर रहे हैं, ऐसे महापुरुष का आशीर्वाद पाकर जीवन धन्य हो गया।
बहुत अच्छा लगा, मोदी जी से हाथ मिलाया, मोदी जी ने बहुत खुश हो गया देख के मोदी जी को।
बहुत बढ़िया है, हमें उससे मिलकर बहुत खुशी हुई। इतना थक गए थे तो भी उसने टाइम निकाला और सब लोगों से मिले और अच्छी तरह से बात की और हमारे कंसर्न सुने और बहुत अच्छा लगा हमें।
We were waiting for him, so we got to see him very close. So I really am liking it. Like seeing him so close, it is really nice.
It's all worth it. Like 5 hours we are standing in this weather. It's freaking cold and you're freezing, but it's all worth it. Just one glance of him and he's so nice. Like, you know, we just love him.
During his 36-hour stay, he is scheduled to hold bilateral meetings with President Trump. This marks PM Modi's first bilateral visit to the US since Trump was sworn in for his second term, placing him among the select few foreign leaders to visit Washington shortly after the new administration's inauguration. PM Modi is the fourth foreign leader to meet Trump at the White House in less than a month of his second term. Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US highlights the growing strategic partnership between India and the United States by focusing on key areas like trade, defense, technology, and global security. This visit further strengthens bilateral ties, reinforcing the deep-rooted friendship and collaboration between both nations. With Shubhendu Ghosh in US, Syed Absarul Hassan for DD India.
Now, the special administration and personal rapport between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump will take center stage, besides a big uptick expected in strategic cooperation across various sectors. From their first meeting in Washington, D.C. in 2017 to the grand Howdy Modi event in Houston in 2019 and Trump's historic visit to India in 2020, the relations between the two countries have been strengthened in areas such as defense, trade, technology and much more. Rabindra Chauhan takes us through the times the leaders of the world's oldest and largest democracies have come together.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in the United States at the invitation of US President Donald Trump. This visit is considered significant as both leaders aim to pick up where they left off 4 years ago in the India-US relationship. For nearly 3 decades, US presidents from both parties have prioritized building ties with India, viewing it as a natural partner in countering a rising China. This visit comes amid the world's ongoing conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Washington on Wednesday after attending an artificial intelligence summit in Paris, making him the fourth world leader to visit US President Donald Trump at the White House since his return. Both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump have much in common, having campaigned on promises to promote the interests of their country's majority communities and
Ambassador Prabhu Dayal is still with us, and we're also joined by Professor W.P.S. Sidhu, Center for Global Affairs, New York University. Professor Sidhu, if I could ask you, in terms of the direction the ties between India and US are expected to take after that meeting between the President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, can it also be gleaned from the kind of people that he's been meeting, that people who've been calling on him. We've had Tulsi Gabbard, who's the intelligence boss in the US now after her confirmation. And we also had the US NSA calling on Prime Minister Modi. Later we'll have Elon Musk as well as Vivek Ramaswamy.
Well, certainly, I think this has been a very good start, as has already been mentioned, for India-US relations. But it also has to be put into a wider context. If you look at the four, Prime Minister Modi being the fourth leader to visit after the new Trump administration has taken over, the emphasis has really been on Asia, or in the Indo-Pacific and the Middle East. The first leader to arrive was the Japanese Prime Minister, and now we have Prime Minister Modi. So clearly, the Indo-Pacific is very, very important for the Trump administration as something very positive, something that they're looking forward to developing. And in the similar logic, the Middle East is equally important. So you had Prime Minister Netanyahu, but you also had the Jordanian King, Abdullah Khamis, visit as well. But I think putting that into context, it shows that India has become a very crucial partner in many of these conversations. And I'm sure you've already outlined some of the ones that are going to be talked about, including technology, but also, I would argue, global affairs, particularly what's happening in the Middle East, but also in Europe, particularly related to Ukraine and Russia. And there, after President Trump's call yesterday, it is also very clear that India and the United States are aligned on having this conflict come to an end sooner rather than later.
Certainly. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, in terms of how the engagement has been happening, it's not just happening when Prime Minister Modi has reached there with the new Trump administration, but also the PM met Vice President Vance in Paris. The Vice President met him there, and earlier, before that, we had Dr. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, going in for the swearing in, the inauguration of Donald Trump, and he also had a quad ministerial there. So how significant is that?
Well, I think that the bilateral engagement got underway, as you said, right from the start. Because on the very day following President Trump's inauguration, there was the Quad meeting. And in addition, our foreign minister, our external affairs minister, Mr. Jaishankar, was given a very, very important seat at the inauguration function. That underlined that the new administration was placing a lot of importance on the relationship with India. So things got off to a good start. As you said, there has been a very important bilateral meeting between the Vice President and our Prime Minister in Paris. There have been a series of important visits by members of the cabinet here in the United States on Prime Minister Modi. So these underline the fact that the new administration wants to put in a lot of content, that it is placing a lot of importance on the bilateral relationship. Of course, during the talks, there would be an attempt, as always is, to address the key issues. And as I said in my opening intervention, these key issues could include the issue of tariffs, immigration, both illegal and legal immigration, because in regard to the illegal immigrants, there is a lot of anguish in India about the manner of their deportation, because many people in India feel that there was some inhumane treatment meted out to them, that the manner of their deportation could have been better handled. Nonetheless, there is also this issue of legal migration. There are lots of Indian students in the United States, and they are keen to stay on, have an H-1B visa, and that has been the tradition, the practice. And the US tech industry leaders have also come out in favor of the H-1B system. So there could be some discussion, but I think that these problems can be ironed out. The issue of tariffs could prove more complicated because of the fact that the Trump administration has said that it would try to cut down the trade deficit with India. And would this involve imposing higher tariffs on Indian imports? It remains to be seen. But I have a feeling that India would be treated slightly more softly than many of the other countries for the simple reason that India's importance as a global strategic partner stands out. India is not only a partner with the United States in Quad, which was referred to by the previous panelist, Mr. Sidhu, but at the same time, India and the United States have very similar views in regard to the important conflicts which are going on. Our Prime Minister has repeatedly said that he believes that this is not an era of war. And President Trump, from the beginning, said that he would try to bring these wars to a close immediately. And in fact, that is his attempt too. So there is similarity in thinking. And in regard to India's own strategic needs, I think there is growing understanding in the United States that these deserve to be met. India has a very, very dangerous geopolitical environment. We have got China on one side, we've got Pakistan on the other side. We need state-of-the-art weaponry. We have been acquiring these from some countries, including the United States, and we would like to continue to acquire them. But of course, the issue is transfer of technology, because we want that these items should, in course of time, be manufactured in India. So there should be the indigenization process alongside the acquisition of sophisticated weaponry.
Right. Professor Dev, what is your take on these commonalities that India and the US have in terms of not just having a safer world, more secure world with, of course, fairness as far as freedom of navigation, rule of law is concerned, particularly in the Indo-Pacific, but also the settling of conflicts?
No, absolutely. I think you can see the commonality at various levels. I would start with actually the bilateral level, and even if you like at the individual level of the level of the two leaders. You know, they're of the cut of the same cloth in many ways politically, and you can see that kind of convergence starting at the domestic level, in some ways also at the regional level, but also the global overview very much is in many ways a common kind of idea. Now, the interesting thing is that in some ways both of them promote the nation first strategy, and sometimes that can be seen as a little bit of a hurdle, but given their personal chemistry and dynamics, I think you can see that this is one area where the two countries are likely to work together, both at the bilateral level but also at the multilateral level, where, as you rightly pointed out, there is a common understanding on wanting to have a more peaceful world, but also there may be some distinctions and differences, which we've seen, for example, and you talked about open and fair access is very much the case in US-India in the Indo-Pacific, but has not translated to the artificial intelligence area, where, for example, the US and the United Kingdom have not signed on to the pledge in Paris, which India, along with 60 other countries, have signed on to as well. So there are also areas of divergence, and certainly one of them may be on trade and also on immigration. But that is what a normal relationship is about. It's about common areas of convergence. And clearly there's a lot of that, particularly in the geopolitical space, but also some areas of divergence. And that seems to be more in the geo-economic area and dynamics. But just as you pointed out, the fact that, you know, many of the very influential people in and outside the Trump administration or advising the Trump administration are of either Indian origin or are of, very close personally to India, is also a very important element and factor which is going to drive the bilateral relationship further.
Yes, the latest example is Paul Kapoor, who's been nominated as the Assistant Secretary of State for South Asian Affairs. Is there some indication in that as well, provided, of course, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, he's confirmed by the Senate?
Is that a question to me?
Yes.
Oh, certainly, these are all matters which could be very consequential. But I entirely agree with Mr. Sidhu. The global geo-economic factor is very, very important. And both countries are taking that into account. The geopolitical factor could also play an important role because on Iran, we could find some problems. We have big investments in the Chabahar port, and we were planning to use that port in such a way that we get access through Iran and Afghanistan to Central Asia. And that would facilitate our exports to that region. And we would be able to bypass Pakistan. But President Trump is taking a very tough position in regard to Iran, and it remains to be seen how he will view the Indian investments in Chabahar and the position which India is taking in that context. So there is some possibility of friction or divergence on that issue. But on the larger geopolitical issue, as also the larger geo-economic issue, there is convergence, and a lot of that has to do with Chinese expansionism, both territorial expansionism and economic expansionism. So I think on balance, there is much that the two countries can work together with, and there is, of course, some possibility of divisive issues, but the art of diplomacy is to be able to manage differences and to find common ground and to push ahead on the common ground areas.
Yes, that's an interesting point you made about Chabahar. Professor Sidhu, what do you make of that proposition? Because if Donald Trump wants lasting peace in the Middle East, Iran really can't be left out of the picture. It can't just be about Palestine. So that's one thing to consider. The other is that the biggest promise perhaps Donald Trump has made is to bring prices down, and gas at the petrol station is a major component of high prices anywhere in any country these days, and he said that he wants to drive them down, drill baby drill and all that, get OPEC plus to produce more oil. So where does all this fit in then? Because India also has huge energy needs where US could come in handy.
Well, certainly, since we're talking about the oil and natural gas, the way that I would sort of talk about that and discuss it is, India faced a lot of challenges because of the conflict which was ongoing within Ukraine and Russia. And if that gets resolved, on the one hand, and on the other hand, the United States also steps up its oil and gas production, then that is going to have a likely impact on the global oil and gas prices, which frankly would be to the benefit of India. Because India is obviously a large importer of oil and gas and is looking for the lowest prices possible. India at the same time has also been very strategic in diversifying its resources. And as Minister Puri said in a recent interview, India is also importing $20 billion worth of natural gas from the United States as well. So I think, India can step up or step down its imports from various countries, depending on the geopolitics. And I think that may well play out vis-a-vis Iran as well. And also, let's not forget that in the past, India has been able to convince the United States for the exemption, particularly for Chabahar, and that may well be possible as well. Part of it may, of course, depend on how the Iranian leadership responds to the overtures by President Trump. At the moment, they have not been very, very positive at all. But that might likely change depending on how the contours of the Middle East change as well.
Yes, certainly, and India's been able to convince the US to grant it a CATSA exemption as well, but we're completely out of time in this particular segment of the show to talk about it, so we'll have to leave it for another time. But we will keep our continuous coverage going as far as this key trip of Prime Minister Modi to the US is concerned. My colleague Sakal Bhatt will be joining us very shortly to take this forward. Our viewers, thank you so much for joining us for the moment, Professor Sidhu as well as Ambassador Dayal. And that's all for the moment in this particular segment, but we will continue our coverage. Stay with us.